A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf, Chapter 4. If Jane Austen suffered in any way from her circumstances, it was in the narrowness of life that was imposed upon her. It was impossible for a woman to go about alone. She never travelled, she never drove through London in an omnibus or had luncheon in a shop by herself, but perhaps it was the nature of Jane Austen not to want what she had not. Her gift and her circumstances matched each other completely. But I doubt whether that was true of Charlotte Bronte, I said, opening Jane Eyre and laid it beside Pride and Prejudice. I opened it at chapter 12 and my eye was caught by the phrase, "Anybody may blame me who likes." What would they blame Charlotte Bronte for? I wondered, and I read how Jane Eyre used to go up on the roof when Mrs. Fairfax was making jellies and looked over the fields at the distant view. And then she longed, and it was for this that they blamed her, that then I longed for power of vision which might overpass that limit, which might reach the busy world, towns, regions full of life I had heard of but never seen. That then I desired more of the practical experience than I possessed, more of intercourse with my kind or acquaintance with a variety of character than was here within my reach. I valued what was good in Mrs. Fairfax and what was good in Adelara, but I believe in the existence of other and more vivid kinds of goodness, and what I believe in I wish to behold. Who blames me? Many, no doubt, and I shall, he called, discontented. I could not help it. The restlessness was in my nature. It agitated me to pain sometimes. It is vain to say human beings ought to be satisfied with tranquility. They never have action, and they will make it if they cannot find it. Millions are condemned to a stiller doom than mine, and millions are in silent revolt against their lot. Nobody knows how many rebellions ferment in the masses of life which people earth. Women are supposed to be very calm generally, but women feel just as men feel. They need exercise for their facilities and a field for their efforts as much as their brothers do. They suffer from too rigid a restraint, too absolute a stagnation, precisely as men would suffer, and it is narrow minded in their more privileged fellow creatures to say that they ought to confine themselves to making puddings and knitting stockings, to playing the piano and embroidering bags. It is thoughtless to condemn them or laugh at them if they seek to do more or learn more than custom has pronounced necessary for their sex. When thus alone, I not unfrequently heard Grace Poole's laugh. That is an awkward break, I thought. It is upsetting to come upon Grace Poole of a sudden. The continuity is disturbed. One might say I continued laying the book down beside Pride and Prejudice, that the woman who wrote those pages had more genius in her than Jane Austen, but if one reads them over and marks the junk in them, the indignation, one says that she will never get her genius expressed whole and entire. Her books will be deformed and twisted. She will write in a range where she should write calmly. She will write foolishly where she should write wisely. She will write of herself where she should write of her characters. She is at war with her lot. How could she help but die young, cramped, and thwarted? One could not but play for a moment with the thought of what might have happened if Charlotte Bronte had possessed, say, 300 a year. But the foolish woman sold the copyright of her novels outright for £1,500, and somehow possessed more knowledge of the busy world and towns and religions full of life, more practical experience and intercourse with her kind, and acquaintance with a variety of character. In those words, she put her finger exactly not only upon her own defects as a novelist, but upon those of her sex at the time. She knew, no one better, how enormously her genius would have profited if it had not spent itself in solitary visions over distant fields, if experience and intercourse and travel had been granted her. But they were not granted, they were withheld. And we must accept the fact that all those good lovers, Latte, Emma, Wuthering Heights, Middlemarch, were written by women without more experience of life than could enter the house of a respectable clergyman, written too in the common sitting room of their respectable house, and by women so poor that they could not afford to buy more than a few quires of paper at a time upon which to write Wuthering Heights or Jane Eyre.